Welcome everyone to episode number 12 of The Bunker Talk. I have my really great friend Stephanie Fortune here from Fortune Business Consulting with me today. Thank you so much, Stephanie, for coming. And I know that we've taken a little longer to start because we're just catching up on life, talking business, talking all things here. I appreciate your time. Thank you for being so gracious. And, Stephanie and I met at a very early stage in our businesses. I remember the day I walked into the Sunrise Chamber for the first time. Yes. And I think you were getting inducted as in one of the roles that you have there.
Likely a board member or as the ambassador chair, but more than likely the board member.
Yeah. And I remember and I ran up to you and I introduced myself and I was like, I really want to spend some time with you because I knew that you were special. So I'm grateful for your friendship. I'm grateful for your support and for you being here. So tell us a little bit about yourself. What do you do? Why do you do it? All that fun stuff.
Absolutely. Well, thank you again for having me. It's certainly a pleasure of mine. And I've enjoyed our journey and growing together personally and professionally. So it's been an exciting journey for sure. So as you mentioned, I am the founder of Fortune Business Consulting. So we're independent payroll and PEO consultants. PEO stands for Professional Employer Organization. So the focus of that is really in 4 core areas. So number 1 being payroll, number 2, human resource services, number 3, workers' compensation, and number 4, employee benefits, right? So that's really what a PEO encompasses. And where we come in is we specialize in identifying the ideal PEO solution for unique and individual companies, right? There are over 500 PEOs.
Wow.
So yeah.
Yeah.
So there are a ton.
Yeah.
And no 2 PEOs are alike. So we know that when we're talking to different business owners and they're facing their challenges, whether it be payroll related, whether it be personnel and staff related, whether they're trying to figure out how to hire, train, and maintain employees, the PEO solution may not always be the same. So we kind of go in, do an audit, really learn about what the challenges that company is facing, and then identify the right PEO partner to really kind of join forces with and help them solve those core challenges that they're facing as a business.
Wow. Yeah. I didn't realize that there was that many options. I mean,
there
that's
are actually over 900 pre-COVID. So
wow,
over 900 pre-COVID.
That's very hard to navigate as a business owner. One of the reasons why I started this podcast was both of us are very young in business, as women in business, and I guess also our businesses are, in the growing phase still. But I feel like so many people start businesses and we were just talking off air, what a lonely, hard journey this can be. And I really want to offer support and advice and real life stories of entrepreneurship, right, to the audience. And one of the things that I love about doing this is stuff like that, right? Like, I mean, I'm in the space and I didn't know that there was so many options. And for a business owner, it could be so difficult, right? Because they come into business because they love their craft, right? I always use the restaurant example. Someone wants to open a restaurant because they love to cook, not because they love to deal with the employees and HR and payroll and comp and all of those things that are so challenging that nobody teaches you when you decide to go on this journey. So that's why it's you, not just your profession, but someone like you is so advantageous to be associated with not just insurance agents, but business owners, because people don't understand what PEOs are, what they can do, and who belongs in it, right? They're not for everyone. There's specialized, classes of business, especially that benefit from it. So why don't we talk a little bit about that? Like, who is the ideal fit? And for the top PEOs, let's say the easier ones, right? Who's a good fit? What business would benefit from being in a PEO?
Sure. So I could do you one better. I can give you kind of like 2 profiles, right?
Sure.
So oftentimes businesses have their business life cycle. So you might be starting a business, you don't have any employees yet. Maybe you have 1099s that you're working with. Then eventually you bring on those folks as W-2 employees. You're now processing payroll. HR is being something that you need to take into consideration and take seriously, because you're managing people, you're training people, you're hiring and firing people. There might be disgruntled employees and different things that go on. So these are things that you have to absolutely take into consideration and be intentional about, right? So let's say you start getting to the point where you have 10, 15, 20 employees or 50, and you now are required to offer benefits. At those different business life cycles, like you mentioned, a lot of times business owners don't necessarily have the expertise, or they're not specialized in those particular areas to be able to say, what are the best benefits plans to offer to my staff? Or what policies and procedures should I actually be or have in place for the type of work that I perform within my organization? Or what holidays should I honor? Even we're coming up on Memorial Day soon. What holidays should I honor within my organization, right? So when you're dealing with a company that's growing or even downsizing and they're experiencing those different business life cycles, different PEOs or different solutions rather might be a better fit, right? So I'd like to say that once you get to the 10 and 15 employee count, right? So you're moving away from, 1 and 2 man shows, or you have people that are more consistently working for your organization, not just 1099s, a PEO might be something to take into consideration, right? So now you're dealing with taxes. Now you're dealing with HR rules and regulations. Now you're likely considering offering benefits or something to that effect. So a PEO might be advantageous or something to take into consideration at that particular point in time, right? Especially when you get to the 50 and you have to offer benefits. And again, as you're growing, you begin to face other challenges. Right. You might get sued. You might have employees that file sexual harassment claims and different things like that. You want to be proactive about these things. Sure. So you want to have those policies and procedures in place prior to something actually happening, right? So just general business growth and business life cycle, those things may garner a need for a solution more so than your company can offer, right? Another thing that comes into play and that we see often is companies that are in high risk or what's considered a high risk industry. So you might have, and we're here in South Florida, so you might have companies that are roofing companies or trucking companies, general construction companies. I have one that I'm working on right now. They go up to, I want to say like 30 feet exterior. Yeah. And they do like painting and stucco.
Yeah, there's no choice.
Work, right?
Yeah.
So they are in an industry that is insanely risky. So when they're going to the market, let's say they're wanting to get different types of insurance, workers' compensation in particular, right, to cover their employees, they are having a hard time actually getting that coverage. And when you are in that type of industry with that much risk and you have, in this particular case, they have about 10 employees, so it's a lower employee count than a carrier might want to absorb at the time because, again, it might not be profitable enough for them, right? One person falls, right? God forbid, right? That policy would pay out a substantial amount compared to what they might take in premium. So for a client profile that looks like that, a PEO might be more of an option that they might want to consider. And a big part of what makes it make sense for the PEO is because they have economies of scale, right? So in short, what that PEO can do is essentially pull the risk of various companies that they have. So one example that I like to give is shopping at Publix versus maybe going to Costco, right? So you're kind of looking at a wholesale solution versus just, something individual.
Costco also has some really good stuff.
They do.
Publix does not.
They do. I'd agree on that.
There's just some stuff that you have to go for.
You got to go to Costco for it. So, and the PEO works in that way, right? So by being able to pull those resources together, they get access to the economies of scale and they get the coverage that they need for their employees, right? So those are two examples of a situation where a business might see a PEO as a suitable option for them, and it might actually make sense for them to consider a PEO to be a partner company.
Yeah, no, that's actually a phenomenal explanation for it. Yeah, and it makes sense. And so those higher risk businesses that, it's funny because, and I'm not trying to cast a judgment, I guess is the word, but the majority of them need help with that aspect of it too, outside of the comp, just the admin side. Correct. The benefit side, the payroll, the HR, all of that stuff, because they're, they opened it because for other reasons, not for the business administration piece. So that's actually a great a point, the way that you say it. Why PEO? Like, why on this journey of so many businesses you could open? Why PEO?
That's a great point. That's a great point. So for those that know me, I guess my personality doesn't always match HR, right? So when people actually meet me, they get to know me. They're like, Steph, I wouldn't have guessed that. Maybe a realtor, maybe in politics, but not HR. I don't see it. So honestly, when I was in college, I worked in retail, and I saw that there was a disconnect between upper level management and the employees and the staff. And for me, it just never made sense. Like I'm naturally a problem solver and I'm naturally a worker. Like I just do what I got to do. Mm-hmm. Like a lot of people make excuses. I just execute, Right. So for me, I'm like, wow, there's such a disconnect, but I would imagine that the goal is the same. Like if I want more time off or if I want favorable time off, I'm going to just do my job effectively. So when I go to make that request, I'm more likely to get it. if I want more flexible schedule, again, just execute my job successfully, and I'm gonna get more. This is a greater likelihood of me getting what I request, right? So I just didn't see why it was so difficult for everybody. So I kind of began to look at that, like, what is morale? What makes an employee happy? What are the things that an employer has to do to motivate their staff? Why is there so much motivation that has to occur for one employee versus another employee? Like, we all trying to get paid, right? We all got bills. So for me, that disconnect just didn't make sense. So I began to do research on that. And then I came across an area called human capital consulting. And that's really just a focus of the talent, right? So the human capital within an organization. So after kind of going deeper and deeper into my studies into that, it pushed me into HR because, again, human resources, right? You are now the person that oversees and manages the talent within an organization. Again, I knew that just my personality wouldn't fit in the traditional HR role within an organization. I just didn't feel like it would work. Like, I don't know if you've seen the show The Office. Yeah.
I mean, you're no Toby.
I just can't be Toby.
And you're definitely not Angela.
It just wouldn't fit, right?
No,
for me, I knew that a traditional role in that way just wouldn't work. And so I began to ask, I began to inquire, I began to network, and I ended up connecting with someone in community. And there was an opportunity to work for a PEO or a PEO broker more specifically, and just learning about the industry, learning about the ability to connect with different clients that face different challenges and all unique in their own right and all facing their own challenges and all trying to, actualize their own potential, trying to reach their own goals. And there were just these little things that were stopping them from getting there. For me, I'm like, I liked the ability to put a solution in place to help them get there, right? How can I help you solve your problem so now you can actualize your potential? So now you can empower your staff so that they can actualize their potential. They might be with you for a year, they might be with you for 10 years, but if they can actually feel like they're appreciated and valued and really truly commit to what they're doing, not only for themselves, but for you, you're gonna have a great 1 year or 10 year or whatever it is, right? So for me, that helped me to see not only can I positively impact ultimately the world by just being able to help one organization at a time, but I can do something that's fulfilling for myself, right? So just in doing that, I stayed within the industry because I realized that there's something that I'm actually good at. And, you get clients that just have a greater appreciation, like stuff like I'm so thankful for you. Like I worked with this company and that company, they weren't able to help me, but you went above and beyond and you really put a solution in place that helped support my challenges, but you actually cared as a person, right? So for me, that made me feel, again, more gratitude. And so it kind of kept me in this space. And I'm appreciative of that because I've met some phenomenal human beings in this space. And again, I can't be more thankful for it.
Sure. That's actually so true because it's very typical in that payroll PEO space where it's so transactional. Right. So when working with Fortune Business Consulting, it's not a transaction, right? You're on the account for the life of the account, obviously, and you're a consultant to them. It's not just, making sure that the numbers fit into a PEO, right? And you're not being passed on to a 1-800 number after 3 months.
Correct.
Right. It is personalized service that's motivated by passion for helping people. I mean, what more could you want?
No, truly. And I know business owners value that.
Absolutely.
And
especially today, in today's age, where the service is just garbage everywhere.
It's gone out the window.
Service is gone.
So that human element, that human touch, that extra level of care and attentiveness, it goes a long way.
Absolutely.
And again, working in this industry and knowing like there's a full scale of companies, right? There's companies that are uber large and they won't look at you unless you have 100, 500 or more employees. And there's some that cater to smaller employees. And even seeing how certain PEOs manage a relationship with the client, it's heartbreaking because I'm a business owner. I'm a small business owner. Right. So I know that, being treated like crap simply because I have X amount of employees or I'm not generating this many millions in dollars a year. And, I'm blood, sweat, and tears committing to my craft here. I'm trying to build up my company. I'm supporting my employees. And to know that you don't get a certain level of treatment, like that is something that I just don't appreciate as a person in general, right? So when I see certain companies treating it that way and it is very transactional or they don't get the level of care, for me, it just motivates me to want to go more above and beyond for my clients because I know what they do deserve. And it's crazy to me when I get clients that tell me, like, they're so wowed by me, like, responding to an email. And I'm like, wait, so they don't even respond to your emails? That's like a bare minimum. Like, and that it's insane to me, but it is true. And there's some companies, like you said, like I'm here for my client forever, right?
For the life.
You have companies that, and it happens all the time. They start with one person, 2-3 months later, different person. 2-3 months later, again, another person. And it's like, okay, wow, there's no real consistency. So even if there is an issue, you can't even track down who you spoke to at this point in time when that issue did occur.
Right.
So
because
it makes it harder.
These companies, that's what it is to exactly what you just said about making it harder. These companies that treat these business owners as transactions don't understand that payroll and benefits and HR is not number one on this business owner's mind, right? They're thinking about serving that next pizza. They're thinking about going to the next house call for that AC, like making sure that the people are on the road, that we're getting back to our point. Like they treat it like they're the only ones that matter in this business scope. And that's why it's so much more valuable to work with someone like you that understands and alleviates that for the business owner, right? Because they get to go back to working on their business, which is why they started it in the first place.
And ultimately you want to empower them to be able to focus on what they do best, right? How can I empower you to tend to your craft? Right. So absolutely.
But that wanting to empower them comes from passion. For what you do, which is evident. So that's great. So you just said you've met a ton of people, and I know that you network a lot. Give us some networking tips. Like, what are like 2-3 really good, solid networking, maybe do's and don'ts even that you've learned in your journey, because you're very involved in the community. You're very involved in several groups, and I know you've scaled it back some. But even talk about that. Like maybe when is it time to scale it back? Yeah. Right.
That's fair. Okay, I like it. So I would say one of the things that I did coming into, even starting a business, you're hitting the pavement and you want to hit the ground running.
Right.
And so what I did was I was on every scene, talking to everyone, doing everything.
Right.
And while the visibility is there, people see you, you get burnt out rather quickly. Right. And you want to make sure that those connections are impactful and they're powerful connections. So one of the things that I will say is be intentional with your networking, right? So whether that means going to a few groups and being intentional about the conversations that you're having, so that way when you go to do a one-to-one with that person, it's just more of a powerful conversation and dialogue, and there's a greater sense of rapport that's built, as opposed to, hey, you're passing by someone and did I give you a card, and you're flinging business cards like they're Frisbees. Actually make more powerful connections. Another thing that I would say is, if you already know, and we talked about this off air as well, if you already know that there's certain industries or there's certain professionals or there's certain people that you need to connect with that could be of value to you, whether that be, in your direct sphere of influence, but they help to generate the right type of leads that you need, look at those groups and those associations as the ones that you should network at, right? So for me, a good lead source for me are insurance agents. So I sit on the board for, and I'm a part of an insurance association, right? That we both sit on the board for, right? So that gives me access, but it also gives me the opportunity to learn about not only the insurance industry, some of the challenges that they're facing, but how I can better be a resource to them, right? So be genuinely interested in supporting and aiding and and assisting on some of the challenges that they're facing, right? So don't make it just about you. Right. We get it. Everybody's motivated by self-interest. There's something that you eventually want out of this, right? But don't go in it just being one-sided, right? Be intentional about giver's gain and contribution and pouring back, right? So that would be another thing that I would say. For me, like you mentioned, I am definitely pulling back. And again, burnout is real. Right. So I would say when you begin to feel that your time just isn't being spent well, when you begin to feel that the passion just isn't there anymore. Again, if it's something, especially because, again, you can pay for different groups and pay for leads, pay for different associations and so forth, but you also pay with your time.
More. You pay more with your time.
Absolutely, yes.
Than the dollars. 100%. The dollars you can make it back in one transaction if it's, whatever it is, right? But your time, you can never get it back.
Correct. So if you find that you're going to event after event, you are more and more drained. Like you're dreading going there, getting in the car. You're not really getting leads from that group or that, whatever it is. And you're like, man, like, I don't know if I'm going to keep doing this or I don't know if my contribution is to no avail. That might be a sign that, hey, something needs to change, right? Whether it's you, whether you're seeing that you're not as motivated or inspired, you're not as passionate about what you're doing, whether it's the particular group that you're involved with, there might be something that you need to change. And I was actually in one group where I realized, unbeknownst to me until I left the group, that there was something going against me the entire time. They actually didn't like my employer. When I was working for another gentleman, they didn't like my employer.
So you never got a chance.
I went in with a target on my back.
Right.
And so I did everything. I was involved. I was in leadership. I was always there. I was always supporting, but I never had a real shot, truly,
right.
because again, they didn't like my previous employer, and I didn't know that.
Right.
So sometimes there might be another reason why you don't feel as motivated or supported, and you're like, man, I'm doing all the right things. There might be something else, right? But if you begin to just feel that way, you might want to just look to identify what's going on here. Is it just me? Is it the group? Is it, just my passion is just not there anymore? Try to figure out what's going on, because again, that's your time and that's your money.
Right.
Right. If you're not enjoying it.
Right. One of the things that you said too about, I think that, and we've all been there, right? Starting a business, you have to pay your bills. You're probably desperate, right? And so you go everywhere to be everything. You do all that stuff. And in reality, first of all, that comes off. If you're walking into these groups desperate, people are going to recognize it and they're going to avoid you. Yeah. So that's not the way to go. It's be intentional. Like you said, be intentional. And it's so funny because even though I've been doing this for so long, it kind of just clicked for me recently about being intentional with my time. My calendar was running my life, and you were way busier than I ever was. So I would tell Steph, how do you do it? How do you do it? And so, it's great that you recognize too, that you were able to step back and prioritize yourself too, because it comes to a point where if you don't feel good and if you're not, if you can't wake up every day energized with what you do in your business, it's going to suffer, right? We have to take care of ourselves and prioritize ourselves so that we can come and do what we do. So I think that that's so important too. When you're starting, it's be intentional. And sometimes you have to go to some of the things to find out what works. Correct. Some advice that I got really early on was honestly, don't go to the free events. Yeah. The free events, it's like the people kind of either want food, because if you're serious about your business, you'll pay. Yeah. So I usually even put like a cap on it. Like if I pay $15, it's probably not where I need to be. Yeah. It's for my profession too. Yeah. Like I'm very specific, obviously, in what I do, just like you do. Yeah. Like there's no reason for you to be in a certain area when it's better. Your time and your money is better spent in going to spend time with contractors versus, doctors. So
to that point, right? So just thinking about whatever product or service you sell, right? Look at the price point.
Right.
So there's a difference between, buying a designer bag and going to Walmart and getting some Walmart brand bag.
Right.
So okay, if I'm going to go to a free event, the likelihood of me finding a prospect or a client that can afford this top tier solution or top tier product, the chances might be more slim, right? I have some groups that the luncheon alone costs like $115, $130 for a lunch. Mm-hmm. But I can tell you, I've gotten my largest clients from that same group, right?
So it's a bigger pool of who you want.
Correct.
Which is which I think it's one of the mistakes I made when I opened. And I think a lot of business owners do, especially when you just open, is not even knowing who's their ideal client. Correct. Like if you start knowing that you want to write, HVAC companies that have 50 or more employees and they make $8 million in revenue and they have 35 trucks on the road. Well, I mean, that person is not at a free happy hour. Right. They're just not. Right.
And again, it's but once you figure that out,
it's powerful. It's so powerful. It takes a long time.
It's huge.
So hopefully somebody listening to this can take our advice, because don't waste the time that we did. Right. It's very powerful to learn that early on. And it's painful too, because those referrals don't come every day either.
And not every referral is a good referral.
Oh yeah.
And I was told, your first client might be your worst client. And thankfully that wasn't the case, but it was a pain in the, what?
I have seriously. I have my first client still, and he's great. He's actually awesome. Very, very nice. And I still have him. Yeah. He's actually a very nice gentleman. And I've referred him some work too. Nice. He was able to do, So thankfully, I
had to fire my first client.
Oh gosh.
It just wasn't a fit. Oh. And even when you get to that point as a business owner, it's a refreshing feeling.
Oh yeah.
Because you feel like in the beginning you have to take everything.
Right.
Like you're hustling and you're trying to make it work. So you have to take on every piece of business and you have to just hope it works. But sometimes you got to get to a point where you're like, the person was literally costing me more than they were generating for me. Right. So the administrative time, the rewriting of the business, the calls, it was so much that it literally cost me more to tend to this client.
You lost money
than what was bringing in. And it didn't even take into consideration the headaches and the relationships that as a result of it. Because again, in my industry, if you're working with a carrier or a PEO partner or something to that effect, my name and reputation is attached to these deals and these clients in this business. So if I keep going back to this particular PEO or this particular company and saying, hey, well, you know, this happened and this is what's going on. And it's like, well, this has happened 5 times, Stephanie. Right, so clearly something is going on here. So that's something else to definitely keep in mind as you're building and strategizing for how to properly grow your business. And again, it's not going to be linear. It's not going to be black and white. It's not going to be, hey, I can identify my niche and I'm going to be able to get there, hit $1 million in 6 months. And that's going to be the end all and be all. But by identifying these shortcuts or these solutions that just make things just a little bit more efficient, it's going to save you more time, more headache, and it's going to make it just that much. Your chance of success is going to be greater and more expeditious, to be quite honest.
It's because obviously when you open a business, you think, you need to sell, right? That's how you pay the bills. But there's so much power in knowing your numbers, right? And when you know what your hourly rate is, when you divide what you want to make for your first year, whatever, your 10th year, whatever it is, and you divide it by an average number of hours worked, right? Just knowing your numbers. When I get a referral right now, I'll sit and think, how much is estimate? How much is this going to cost? And based off one conversation with someone, you can know if they're price shoppers, if their problem, because it's always the agent's fault. It's always, right? I'm sure in your space, well, the payroll company, no, not always, right? And it's, I had recently what I've enjoyed in the position where I'm at is, this is how the bunker does business. You're not going to tell me how to do business with the bunker. So we have a process. We ask you a couple questions. They're not invasive. I'm not asking you for your social security, right? Like I need to know who you are, what you need, what you think you need, right? I have a process, all that stuff up front. I send you some documents that I need completed. We use a program called Wonderwrite, which is amazing. And we, people input the information digitally. It's great. Okay. Automatically, I had a gentleman, he respond to me. Oh, that form is too long. I'm not doing it. And I said, okay, well then I'm not the agent for you. Yeah. Before I would have been like, well, I can call you and I'll answer I'll ask you and I'll fill it out. No. Okay. Well, good luck finding insurance. That. Right.
I love that.
But that comes with understanding that this person up front was already going to be a problem for the way I conduct business.
Correct.
If you can't fill out a digital application, for whatever reason, maybe he used an excuse that he didn't do it, or maybe he just didn't know how to do it, whatever it is, it doesn't matter because he's not my client.
Yeah.
Because you need to be able to fill out an application digitally to work with the bunker.
Yeah. And even the way you handle problems, right?
Right.
A lot of times if you approach it in that way, just from the very beginning, again, we don't necessarily know what the reason being, but hey, this is too long, or I'm just not technologically savvy, or whatever the case is, having that conversation. Right. So some people, they approach it in that way where they're like, yeah, no, I'm just not going to do this. Like, waste my time. Well, it's your solution. It's your insurance. So you want to invest your time.
It's not a waste. And so like, even some things like I've learned with, some of these, the groups that I'm a part of, which I'm so thankful for, things like establishing standards. So for example, if someone comes to me within 30 days, if they're renewing in 10 days, I cannot help you, especially with the way the market is now. Like I cannot blast like you were just saying, right? If I continue to send my underwriters submissions that are renewing in 10 days, they're just going to push me to the side.
Correct.
So I'm not going to ruin my business opportunities to place good business and burn my bridge because of someone that waited too long to get their insurance.
Correct. And a lot of times, even when that is occurring, there might be a major problem.
Exactly. They're panicking.
and a lot of times, unfortunately, the clients are not really transparent about it.
Right.
So you're racing against the clock. You got 10 days and you're doing everything that you need to do. And unbeknownst to you, the underwriter might come back and say, hey, well, we realize that they have a current active and open claim. Right. So they may not even give you all the information that you need to really help them. So a lot of times, like you said, having those processes and procedures in place, having those standards in place helps you and gives you more peace of mind when dealing with certain clients.
And I get to control my time. I realized, and like we said, it took me a long time to realize how valuable my time was. And so I think that's one of the best pieces, one of the things I've learned that I think whenever someone asks me anything about like networking or starting a business and the things I've learned, it's always that. It's understand the value of time. Yeah. I'll pay more for an event. I'll pay more for anything if it checks a couple boxes and they respect my time.
Yeah. Because
I can't get that back. Yeah. Right. But that comes to knowing, again, your numbers, knowing where you need to be found by your ideal prospect. And then, and these things are hard to do because sometimes they take months to come through.
And that staying power, that confidence, that hard. Grit is challenging. It's challenging because you might see opportunities or what looks like opportunities coming and you're like, man, but if I just work on that and
even if it's good business, it might be good business, but even for me, right? Like a fast bop, right? To quote, okay, it's $500, but I make $50. Like if you're set up for the bulk, great, then you should do it. Right. But someone like me, where I'm doing everything, I'm not set up for bulk work. So I really need to take that into consideration as well. Yeah. So even all business is not good or bad, right? Like it could be good business, but it could be time consuming business that's taking me away from that lunch with the top HVAC contractors in my city.
Correct. And to that point, I think one thing that I'm appreciative of, and I'm an avid reader, one of the things that I was able to take away is just identifying things that I, Stephanie, have to do, right?
Right.
Versus something that can be automated.
Yes, I'm in that process.
Something that can be outsourced.
Right.
Right. So looking at things and putting them into those three categories. Does Stephanie actually have to work on this right now? Right. Or can my administrative assistant do that? Mm-hmm. Can my office manager do that? Right. Or is there a technology that can actually do that?
Right.
Right. Like you said, do I have to make this phone call and spend an hour on the phone with you answering these questions that the same technology, the same software just sent you? It's legible. You can take your time to read it. You can fill it out, come back when you got a minute. I don't have to play phone tag trying to find you, catch you. You're on your lunch break. I'm on my lunch break. You're in a meeting. So I think being able to identify those different things also help us to be more efficient. But it also helps our business to grow and be leaner in many instances too, especially when you're first starting out. We have to identify ways to be economical and to be lean because a lot of times it's just us. Right. When I started, it was just me. So not only did I have to figure out how to be on the scene and, like I said, be everywhere at one time, but also work the business that was actually coming in. So by leveraging technology, I was able to make my time just that much more efficient. Mm-hmm. And so by identifying those things, it helped me significantly. And when you can identify technologies that, whether it's a CRM, whether it's something that helps from an accounting perspective, whether it's something that helps from a payroll perspective even early on, there are technologies that help us do things. Even social media, leveraging social media, scheduling posts, come on, there's so much technology.
Even asking your clients and your prospects, like, hey, can we text you? So many people tell me, please. Right? So then I could automate these text messages. That was interesting for me. I could automate them. I don't have to sit here and actually text them. Like, that's been huge for us. Like, right now we have a CRM. When we move a quote to quote sent, I have 2 text messages scheduled. I don't have to pick up the phone and call them and ask them, did you get the quote? Automatically, hey, we emailed you your quote. Let us know if you have any questions. So they know, all right, let me go check my email.
But this is
3 days later, it's, hey, have you checked it? I think it's actually 2 days later. Have you checked it? Do you have any questions? You can respond to us here. You can respond to the email. You can schedule time, 15 minutes on CR's calendar. And then I have my VA call them because there's not transacting insurance. He's just saying, hey, CR just wants to make sure you got your quote. Did you have any questions? I can schedule some time and I'm not playing phone tag.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It's genius.
See, it's so funny because I feel like, and this is a personal thing, we're always on.
Yes.
We are always on. So there are things that I'm like, all right, this is my personal space.
Right.
So for me, when it comes to text messages, I look at it in that way. Right. So when I get text messages,
well, I'm texting from my office number, by the way.
Okay.
It's not my cell phone.
So sometimes I'll get text to my cell phone.
Oh, no.
And I'm like, dude, I don't know who these people are. Right? They're like, oh, are you still looking to sell your home? Well, I was not looking to sell my home, as a matter of fact.
Oh, yeah, no.
So I like that you brought that up because, you're giving them the opportunity to say, hey, you know what, this actually would be a lot easier for me. Especially depending on the type of clients that you work with. Like I deal with clients that are out in the field all the time. So they can't necessarily just stop, pick up a phone call and, So it might be easier when they're taking a quick break to look at a text message. And maybe that's something that I need to figure out how to incorporate into my business because I know even just from a notification standpoint, hey, this was done or this was executed.
Right. Even small things.
Yeah.
Right.
It could be beneficial. And again, you won't lose that personal touch because I like the fact that you still have your VA calling just to verify certain things. Right. So, and that's another thing that's important for me. Exactly. I don't want to lose a personal touch. Right.
And the human connection is still there because it doesn't have to be me. Even like after we sell a policy and we move it to sold and there's this whole post binding thing, my VA gets a task 2 to 3 days later to call and introduce himself. Hey, I'm David. I'm the person that, I'm your customer service rep. I'm the person that intakes the information. If you ever need anything, call me. I'm here. Here's my email. And then he sends it, like if he has to leave a message, he'll send them an introductory email, things like that, where it's a human touch. Yeah. But I get to use technology and not lose the human touch, right? And that I don't need to make that phone call.
Correct.
They already spoke to me throughout it. And I do send them a handwritten card thanking them. I still do that, and I do that.
Yeah.
So it's still a very personal experience, but leveraging technology.
Correct. And again, going back to just quantifying your worth, right? So maybe you sending that email or you making that phone call versus your VA making that phone call, right? We know that, and for me, I know that an hour of my time can be much more valuable, so to speak, right? If I'm sitting at a luncheon or if I'm doing a speaking engagement or if I'm having a one-to-one with someone that can open doors for me, that can generate more business, right? Versus just doing some administrative thing.
Absolutely.
Right? Versus making certain phone calls, right? So by being able to identify that too and leveraging all of the above, you can absolutely it can really change your business.
It does.
It can really change your business.
I'm in that process this year of leveraging technology and automation and all that stuff. And it's a painful process too, because you try things, you got to tweak it. It's constantly tweaking it.
Mm-hmm. And even with your clientele, if they've grown used to something like that, for me was huge because they were used to Stephanie. They love Stephanie. And they're like, can I speak to? Nope. Just let them know that I'm not available. Let them know that you can support them. Let them. So even as I got into hiring, that was huge for me because everybody was just so used to Stephanie. So that was hard for me and my clients. It almost felt like a breakup, but it wasn't, because it's like, we're so used to talking to each other and I'm so used to explaining in education and everything like that. And we did it. We still educated, we still explained, but it just wasn't always Stephanie, right? My team was educated. They were trained. They had the knowledge base to educate our clients, but they were just so used to me. So that was something that I had to learn to be okay with, and also essentially train my clients as well to understand new processes.
It's almost like, hey, listen, like, don't forget that I'm also a business, a for-profit business. And so I need to scale. Like if there's ever emergencies or, things call me. But, and I think that when you have conversations like that, like, I'm not forgetting you. I appreciate your business. I'm not outgrowing you, because people take it personal. Correct. They do take it personal.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you, because you said you were an avid reader. Give me some of the books that we need to be reading. What has been your favorite read? Oof. Or the most impactful, let's say, in your business and your personal life?
Man, okay, so I don't know that I can give you my one favorite.
Sure.
But this is a tough one, man. Okay, so Never Split the Difference.
I'm reading that right now.
Okay. So I would say that book, and again, we're just talking about valuing ourselves and quantifying that. But I would say Never Split the Difference for me, I think it's Chris Voss. Chris Voss. Mm-hmm. He the way he kind of showed me how to properly value my time and what I do and my contribution and my impact was significant for me, because sometimes you play the comparison game, or you play, all right, well, I'm Fortune Business Consulting and now I'm going against Paychex or ADP and they've been in the industry for X amount of years and they have this much market cap and blah, 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 right? Then you're like, no, but I provide high touch. I'm committing to this client and this process and actually learning about their industry and their business and truly valuing them as a person. Right? So by reading that book and understanding how to stand up for myself, right? How to put value and quantify that value, and the impact has been huge. Spin selling is another great one, because again,
I haven't heard of that one.
So it stands for situation, problem, implication, and need payoff, right? So that's what SPIN stands for, right? what it does is it teaches you with high value selling how to have the conversation. So going into the situation with a particular client, what circumstances am I coming into right now, right? As a result of this situation, what problems are you now having? Okay, so you had a claim, and the problem is that you're now looking at increased rates, and you have a higher mod as a full result of everything that's going on. You also got canceled, and now you can't find a particular company to write your business. What's the implication of that? It's going to affect cash flow. It's going to affect your bottom line overall. You can't find coverage. So right now you have to stop the projects that you're actively working on because they won't pay you until you actually have the coverage that you need. If you now have a gap in coverage, that affects things even to a greater degree, right? So that's the implication of all of these things. And then again, the need payoff, what's a solution that we can actually put in place to help alleviate all of these things or quickly stop the bleed? So by being able to, not only for me to have a clear understanding of everything that's going on, the impact to your organization, I help you see that.
Right. It's almost tangible.
Correct.
Right.
And we quantify it.
Yeah.
So
that's
again,
great. Oh, I wrote it down. I'm going to read it.
Looking at, okay, you just told me you had a claim. My premium went up by $10,000. That's not the only cost to you. Because now you have to call me, right? We have to have this conversation, this meeting. You have to call your partner companies and let them know, hey, I'm working on this, but don't drop me as a contractor and hire someone else. Like, you have to now talk to these different companies, say, hey, don't pull these funds from our account because we don't have it yet. We haven't gotten paid yet. So there's so many things that happen. And by being able to bring it out and kind of position it in that way, you can show everybody involved in this process how much time, how much money it's going to cost you, and where you put in the solution, how to stop the bleeding a lot quicker. So for me, that book, I've read it several times. It's helped me to clearly see. And even where I might lose a client, I'm like, man, what happened? Like, what did I miss? If I go back through that process, I can identify what I didn't identify at the time, or what I might have skipped. Like, Steph, you didn't realize that this other thing was going on. And as a result, that's the impact that it had, right? So that was a huge one for me, spin selling. Good to Great.
I haven't read that one either.
The E-Myth Revisited.
Someone just told me to read that one.
So there's a lot of great ones. Begin with the End in Mind. There's a lot of great ones that talk about one thing. So there's a lot of great ones that really talk about processes and procedures, where to focus your time, effort, and energy, how to spend time effectively, how to leverage technology. So a lot of the books, and one thing that you will also see is as you begin to read more and more, a lot of them they do get similar. So you might read like a few in the same kind of subject or same area. And you're like, okay, this is a little bit redundant, but I appreciate having a full scope of this understanding.
Right, different
of this
points
topic,
of view
right?
of the same topic.
Correct. So I would say read.
Yeah. That was going to be my next question to you. I was going to say, like, how much growth do you think or have you always been a reader?
I come from very humble beginnings, like very extremely humble beginnings. First generation Haitian American here. Parents, unfortunately, now both deceased, but we just dealt with so much, and we lived in poverty most of our life. And so for me, I always knew that I wanted more. I knew that there was something beyond. I just didn't figure, I couldn't make the connection between how I get there,
right,
where I am now, and how I get to this thing that I see on the TV. How do people get there?
Right.
So for me, it was the unknown, but that curiosity was always there. So for me, I sought out mentors. I read books. I did the things that the average person just wasn't doing. And so by reading, though, I was able to get access to these authors and these mentors and these people that pay hundreds of thousands of dollars to get access to. I'm going to pay $30 and go get your book.
And you can pick their brain, basically.
Because you're dropping gems in these books right now. Right. And you're spending hours and hours writing this craft. Right. So now I'm going to take this knowledge that you've written, that you've lived, that you've had your mentors tell you about, that I'm going to now take this, read it, digest it, and figure out how to apply it. Because application is key too. Right.
Reading without application doesn't work.
Correct. And people say knowledge is power. I don't believe knowledge is power. I believe applied knowledge is power.
Right.
Because if you do nothing with that information, it's nothing. Right. You know what I'm saying? There's so much information out there today.
Overwhelming
and there's
amounts.
A number of dense people that's still out there. You know what I'm saying? I don't mean to sound awful, but so it's not just that the information is there. Right. You have to be able to do something with that information. So for me,
I love that.
So for me, I read, but I try to apply what I read. You know what I'm saying? And so if you can start early and do it often, even if you're reading a book on a commute, like you listen to an audiobook, listen to a podcast on a commute going somewhere. Let's say you don't catch 100% of it, but you get one key piece of information. Yeah. And you can apply that thing. Trust me, it'll certainly catapult you for sure.
Yeah. I actually read and listen to the audiobook at the same time because I feel like I can gather the intention behind the cadence of how it's written. Yeah. Otherwise, I'm just reading it in my voice, and maybe I would miss something, right? Maybe in the way I would read it, it would mean something different, right? Without the emphasis, exactly.
Correct.
I loved, and I think I know that I just retain more when I hear it in someone else's voice, when I listen and read at the same time. Okay. So I love to do that. Yeah, I'm finishing up. Never Split the Difference now. Yeah, and it is great, and the tips of negotiation skills that he gives and the mirroring and things like that, like it's really, really good.
Yeah.
Really
and you don't realize how much value, not even from a business perspective, but in life, because in reading that,
everything is a negotiation.
Going to buy a car,
everything.
Listen, going to buy a car, going to a restaurant, going to a grocery store, everything. Even in my relationship.
Right.
I'm like, I want to go to this restaurant. You want to go to that
I was just going to say, like, what do you want to eat?
I'm like,
eat? So what do you want to eat? There you go.
No, seriously. Yeah. And it's funny because a lot of the stuff, right, I told my husband about. And then we would do it and we're like,
yeah, it's like who's gonna mirror who more, right? That's funny. Yeah. That's funny. It actually takes me like a second. It takes me a second to like I repeat it out loud, like in my head to do it.
And it's funny because it's even when I am just in a more reserved state, right? And I repeat something that someone says, it allows them to think about it again.
Right.
Because a lot of times we listen simply to respond.
Right.
But we don't fully like capture the intention of what the person said or even what we're saying in response, especially if we're uber emotional, right? So sometimes, and again, I don't know what shift occurred for me, but there are times where I'm just more in I don't want to say passive state, but I'm just being more intentional with my words and I speak less. But in these conversations, I find that it allows the person to really hear themselves again. And it just makes that conversation much more impactful.
Right.
And it's like, by repeating what the person said, by just extra 2-3 seconds of a pause, it allows someone to just digest the information just a little bit more. And then they start talking and talking.
Well, the thing is too that some people, my mom is a very reserved person. And she's always, I remember all of my life since I could retain anything, she's always told me, think before you speak. Always think before you speak. You can't take it back. So by nature, I'm not very impulsive. I actually am very, and I'm not very reactionary either. Like I can, things can happen and I'm calm and I don't overreact and I try to listen. And even though my reactions are at times passionate because I speak that way in general, but they're usually, it's usually thought. Like I'm, even if I do react in an impulsive manner, it's usually not with my words. Like I'm very logical as well. So, and I think that kind of goes hand in hand too. Like logically, if people just applied logic to more scenarios, I think we would all just be better too, because emotions are tricky. Right. And I mean, I lose my temper and all that stuff, but I do try. I always just hear my mom, like, think before you speak. You can't take things back. And I think that plays into people don't listen or to understand. They listen to react, to respond. They're on defense. They're ready. Right. Sure. So it's like, and in business that could be, especially in the sales position, that doesn't work. You definitely can't be impulsive and you can't just say what you think.
And when you're dealing with high value items and high value clients, that's another thing that is critically important. And you got to check your ego at the door. You got to check your ego at the door. And I see a lot of times that ego may come into play when it comes to some of these things, and that hurts you. Right.
In the long run, for sure, it does. It does. I want to be respectful of your time. One last thing that I want to touch on, because you do so much work in the nonprofit world. Talk to us a little bit about, give us a summary, whatever you want to talk about, enlighten on the benefits of working in that community, whatever you want, because I know that, you know, that to your core is who you are.
Yeah.
And you give so much of yourself to that.
No, I appreciate that. So ultimately, my life's mission is to empower. And I really and truly try to do that with everything that I do, even just from a conversation with somebody, right? So within my business, I do it, you know, and in the community, that's what I want to do. So that's the core of my why, right? I sit on the board for and support a number of nonprofit organizations, Handy being a key organization that I support. They are based here in South Florida, more so on the east side of town. But Handy, they actually just changed the acronym. So it stands for Helping Advance and Nurture the Development of Youth.
Okay.
And so the primary focus of what Handy does is supporting young persons that might have been in the foster care system, relative care, experience abuse, homelessness, or something to that effect, right? I personally, like I mentioned, have experienced a number of these things myself. So there's a lot of it that comes from personal experience that drives me to want to make an impact, want to be a voice, want to be an agent of change, want to be the right type of statistic.
Right.
Because oftentimes people label you or say that you're just going to be another statistic. You grew up in this environment. You grew up in the hood. You grew up broke, homeless, this and that. This is what your life trajectory is going to be. And I like to show people that that's not the case, right? It doesn't necessarily guarantee that I'm going to have a life of low quality because of where I came from, right? I believe in the combination of nature and nurture. So for me, being able to support and give back is huge for me. So we actually just had our Scholars Breakfast, which honors the youth that just graduated university. And so we honored a number of youth, and it was phenomenal. They're actually doing a tally now, but I think this was going to be about $400,000 raised. So our top grossing year, yes, huge. So our top grossing year to be able to support these families that need support and that need help. We also have Raina Group Home. We have Flight. Raina Group Home supports young boys that are on the spectrum, and they're also either experiencing abuse or homelessness or something to that effect. So they're in homes all throughout South Florida, and they're looking to expand a bit. But again, sometimes that can be a little bit challenging. Then you have Flight Center. That's very similar to the core focus of what Handy does, and also help young persons that are in the LGBTQ plus community. And so again, helping with food, helping with housing, helping with different resources, whether it be like a landing space. So let's say I just came out to my parents and now they've kicked me out the house. I might have somewhere to stay now. I might have food and clothing for the next few days while I figure out, what to do in my life. They provide the support, the counseling, and additional resources that they need through. And I was already connected through this organization, but through the Latin Builders Association, they're also connected through, not Homes Inc., they're also connected to LifeNet for Families. So again, supporting persons that are currently experiencing homelessness and helping with food, helping with support in different ways, helping with the mailing address, helping with place to shower. Sure. So by being able to support in that way, again, we're just helping the community overall. People fall on hard times, things happen, life happens. Living this life is not easy.
Right.
So, different people experience different things. And so for me, I know that I alone cannot affect change in a way that I want to affect change. So by being able to lock arms with other organizations, other individuals, other business owners, other persons that really want to make an impact on this earth, that's going to ultimately have a greater impact. And so with me wanting to empower, this is one of the vehicles that I use to be able to do that.
Yeah.
And I know early on, I didn't feel that I could do enough because I'm like, man, I ain't got enough money. Like I can't feed all these people. I can't house all these people. I don't have enough time to volunteer and to do all of this. But starting with just a day, starting with just $1, just a day and just $1, I've been able to do a little bit more. I've been able to connect with just more people. I've been able to leverage my business. I have clients that support some of these nonprofits. Right. I have partner companies that support some of these nonprofits, and that's huge for me, right? So I realized at a point, my network is my net worth, right? And I can use that to help. Right. I can use that to support. I can use that to empower. And so that's what I do. So for me, I'm thankful because it allows me the ability to do that and know that I don't have to do it alone, and we can make a much greater impact together. So for me, it's something that I'm going to do until, just until.
Well, you know what?
And I'm thankful for it.
Lucky for us, you're young and you have a long fruitful road ahead of you. And with your mission and your drive and your discipline and your passion, you're a blessing to our community, to your clients, to your partners. You're a light to be around. So I thank you so much for everything that you do. You put everyone ahead of you. And it's evident, not just in your business, but your passion for helping others. It is. And you give so much of yourself to these nonprofits and these associations. So, and it's never in what you can get, what relationships you're getting out of them. Like that is evident that it is who you are to your core. So we thank you, and thank you for your friendship. Thank you for spending your morning with me. I know we started recording like an hour and a half later. Well, we hadn't caught up in a while, so it had been a while. So thank you so much. And I'll put all your information in the show notes, and then, we'll have to do this again for sure.
Perfect. I like it. Thank you. Thank you for the time. I appreciate it. Thank you for the friendship. Thank you for the hospitality. And I know that we'll continue to grow both personally and professionally.
For sure. And together.
Yes. Yes.